Hello and welcome to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. I'm Alex.
I'm Julio, and thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, head over to Apple Podcasts to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Help promote the algorithm and spread the word.
You can also find us on SoundCloud to subscribe and review, and don't forget to visit our main website, wearethecontrarians.com.
Follow us on Twitter at Contrarian Prime, and to like us on Facebook, visit facebook.com/Contrarian Prime.
And if you have the willpower to keep up with our pretentious ramblings, you can follow us individually at Contrarian Alex for myself and at Ovnio for Julio. That's OVNIO.
Now, time for the podcast.
I am recording.
As am I. Hello, and welcome back to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. My name is Alex, joined, as always, and once again remotely by my cohort and co-host, Julio. Julio, how are things on the south side of Austin?
Well, you might as well just ask, how are things in my house? Just the same as they were before. Last time we recorded, my beard has grown a little more, and
can you grow a real beard, like a full beard?
Oh no.
No, you've been clean shaven as long as I've known you, so I didn't know if you were able of like growing like a Ron Swanson mustache or like a Grizzly Adams beard or something.
Definitely not the mustache. The beard, maybe if I ever tried, but I don't think it would be a pretty sight, and definitely my wife would not approve. So, not going down that path. I don't like it. I don't like shaving either. So I always walk that line of I will put off shaving until I absolutely have to, and that's usually when my wife starts complaining that I'm looking just terrible. And then of course, you know this because you shave as well. Like it sucks when you're shaving after not having shaved for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was like, it would hurt a lot less if I was just shaving every other day. But
yeah, it's a real burden. Yeah, and if you wait too long to shave, it fucking hurts when you shave, and it's I understand the pain. Yeah, I'm kind of just letting mine go and see what happens. I think I'm gonna dye my hair tomorrow out of boredom. I had a virtual happy hour at work, and they're like, "Yeah, now's the time to try crazy shit," because by the looks of things, it looks like at least another month of this. So if I shave my head and bleach it to look like Devin Sawa in the Stan music video, I think it'll hopefully be grown out a little bit by the time we go back to the real world. Speaking of the real world, we are here today to discuss 12 years worth of the real world, at least that of Central Texas.
Yeah, not the MTV version.
No, this isn't what happens when 8 strangers get in a house and stop being polite and start being real. The 2014, how would you describe this? It's obviously a coming of age, but I mean from the filmmaking perspective, would you call it like an experimental film?
Some reviews were calling it that. I would call it
unnecessary.
A vanity project.
There you go. Yeah, everyone always calls NXT, the wrestling promotion, a Triple H vanity project. So this would be Richard Linklater's NXT, is Boyhood from 2014. I'd forgotten that it was a summer release. This definitely seems like awards bait, so I'm shocked it didn't come out at the end of the year.
Well, they knew that if they started playing the movie in the summer, it would finish playing by the time that award season rolled over.
Touché. Boyhood, Richard Linklater's 12-year project in which he made a film over the course of 12 years with Patricia Arquette, Eller Coltrane, Lorelei Linklater, and Ethan Hawke, respectively, for the duration of it. Julio, did you see this in the theater?
I did. It was a double feature with 12 Years a Slave.
Are you serious?
You just spent 24 years in the movie theater. No. But I did. The hype was pretty high at the time. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I caught it as soon as I could. And it's been however long, almost 10 years. So I liked it at the time, and I haven't seen it since.
Same. I own the Criterion because I enjoyed my theater experience of it so much. I saw it at the Regal Arbor, and my theater experience was a little bit different in that the crowd I was there thought the movie was supposed to be cover to cover a comedy, and they were laughing at very inappropriate things, so that kind of killed my initial enjoyment of it. But we'll get to that, and we'll get to basically all the bits of this, so buckle in. If this is your first time listening to the Contrarians, we want to thank you for taking the time to tune in. If you're a returning listener, bear with us while we catch the newbies up to speed. Our gimmick, not unlike making a movie over a 12-year process, we also have a gimmick, and that is that we like to rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine. As we say, we find a movie on the old Rotten Tomatoes that is highly rated, also known as certified fresh, and make a case for why it should maybe be taken down a peg or two. And on the other side of that coin, we find one of those nasty green splotches, a rotten film, and make an argument for the positive merit in it. If you want to know how far we can stretch that gimmick, you don't have to go too far. You can just listen to our last episode where we find all the good and the great in Hangover 3. Being that Boyhood is at a towering 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, I think we're gonna hit Mason in the face with a dose of real life.
Yes, we're gonna do what Richard Linklater didn't do in this movie. We're just gonna bring him down to the actual real world. None of this artsy bullshit with his camera, his pictures. We're gonna hit him with actual criticism.
Yeah, the last exchange of dialogue in the movie just had me yelling at the TV, like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And so I'm definitely ready to tell Mason what's up, and Richard Linklater, one of our biggest fans, Rick.
And that was a preview of the second half of the show, Real Talk, where we'll tell you how we feel, how we really feel.
There you go. Julio, since it was at 97%, I mean, people were just fawning over this. They were blasting out of their pants for this. They couldn't say enough nice things. What were some of the critical reactions you were able to find?
I got 4 fresh red tomatoes from the Rotten Tomatoes website, starting with Rochelle Siminowicz from Kill Your Darlings, who says, "Boyhood is a sublime meditation on childhood, parenting, and the passing of time."
Okay.
I mean, sublime, it would be the thing that I'm not sure I agree with, but the rest, I guess. I mean, definitely the passing of time.
They forgot the word white.
There is one minority character that shows up twice in one of the biggest plot contrivances. We shall discuss. Okay, Alexandra McCarran from Women's Voices for Change says Arquette, in what may be the best performance of her career, conveys exactly what it feels like to be a single parent. The word is trapped. Wow. Single parents everywhere, either nodding their heads in agreement or recoiling in horror. Not a parent, certainly not a single parent, so I can't really judge the accuracy of this statement. Based on the experience depicted in the movie, probably nailed it.
Yeah, based on the depiction in the movie, having kids is the worst thing that can happen to someone.
It will drive you to drinking or just pure anger.
Fucking Patricia Arquette just straight up tells her kid, "I just thought there'd be more."
All right, Christopher Preston from One Room with a View says, "It is an incredible film, a power walk through the chapters of childhood and adolescence, an epic poem of candid photographs taped together with strips of sticky, sugary nostalgia."
Yeah, the nostalgia is definitely a heavy crutch in this one.
Sugary is right. And I mean, epic if you're going by length. Yeah, probably. Yeah. And finally, Matthew Lucas from The Dispatch, Lexington, North Carolina, says, "A true honest-to-goodness landmark that will be looked back on for years to come as one of the defining films of our time."
Jesus.
I don't know, Matthew Lucas. Are we looking back on Boyhood in the year 2020? I mean, I know we have other things in our mind, but even if we were not quarantined due to a pandemic, would we be looking back?
If you polled 100 people on the street, I would say 90% of them, or 90 people out of that 100, would probably look back on Endgame as more of a landmark film than Boyhood. That is a very fair point too, to exactly what you were just saying. This is the thing at the line and the argument I always make about Avatar is that it came and went and left no cultural footprint to speak of, and it's not really a movie that people talk about. I think that we may, as we get further into this discussion, may put Boyhood into the Avatar category of a movie that made a big splash but then just kind of sank. Much like Avatar, the Criterion release is what I chose to watch for this one. So
with the extra hour of it's not even deleted scenes or extended scenes, it's just scenes.
Well, no, it's not bonus footage, remember, or it's not special features on a Criterion, it's supplements. That's for as much as I bitch about pretension and people holding their nose in the air, I can never get enough of how just absurdly pretentious Criterion releases are. It's so fantastic. And this is no exception. Have you ever seen the Criterion cover of this?
No, is it an alternate poster, like a different cover?
No, it's just like film strips of the four main characters and pictures of them taken at each like point of filming. So you just kind of, it's like a quick flip book of seeing their age progression. If you've ever, any of our listeners, if you've ever watched a Criterion release, you can quickly know what the menus look like, and it's all uniform. And for this, I will give it props. Like with every Criterion, the transfer was fucking flawless. How'd you watch it? Did you stream it?
I read it on Amazon, and it looked great.
Yeah. So, Boyhood begins with our titular character, Boyhood, staring off. Our main character, Mason Evans Jr., played by Eller Coltrane. It's the poster, and we start off with the most iconic shot of the movie of this little boy just looking into the clouds.
Is it also the most iconic song in the movie?
Oh, I was about to get to that. So
okay.
My main thing was Linklater made a 3-hour movie and put his most impressive shot at it's literally the very beginning. It's all downhill from here. And I had completely forgotten that the movie does begin with Coldplay. And what's the name of that song?
Yellow,
that's it. So again, you're in for 1/3 of your day is about to go to just unrelenting white people shit.
There is only one proper instance to use a Coldplay song in a movie, and that is if Spider-Man is training and just learning how to use his powers. Other than that, fuck off with the Coldplay. Either don't play any music or find something that's a little less just pandering. And that's it. This really, Boyhood, pandering should have been the entire title of this movie.
Absolutely.
Pandering to white people, probably even more accurate.
You're already bleeding into real talk, giving props to that scene in Spider-Man. That's legitimately good. So, Mason and his sister Samantha, played by Lorelei Linklater, Richard Linklater's daughter, and their mother Olivia, played by Patricia Arquette, who's I think the supporting star of this movie. We haven't gotten to the MVP yet, but they live in a small Texas town. It's a lot of just I guess mood setting. Like honestly, I don't really feel like much happens in the first 20 minutes of this movie other than
the
Richard
first
Linklater.
20 minutes. How about the first 2.5 hours?
The first 20 minutes exist just for Richard Linklater to shoehorn in Anthem Part 2 by Blink-182 and Hate to Say I Told You So by The Hives, just so you can know what time period it's in. And waste no time already just painting a poor picture of Olivia, the mother, has a shitty boyfriend and just yelling and fighting in this small home with her kids. It's already a damning representation of the modern single mother.
Yeah, in this first sequence, and I think that's a problem, that she constantly brings up her situation. It's not like, hey, I'm a mom and I'm proud.
As though she didn't put herself in that situation.
Well, she just goes, she has her first big fight with the boyfriend that wants to go party and she can't go because the babysitter canceled, right? And then you see them later and she's arguing.
Who was that guy, by the way? He looked like an 80s porn director.
I mean, maybe he was. You don't know.
I mean, Linklater's in the film industry. He knows a lot of people, I'm sure.
Yeah, I know a lot of the casting of the supporting characters in this movie is pretty suspect. So maybe You don't know, but yeah, they have this argument, and she's just going like, you think I don't want to go have a nice night out of town? You don't think I want to go party? You don't think I want to go like, watch a movie? And it's like she looks like an adult woman having the meltdown that a teenager would have.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, so your problem is that you have kids. Well, everybody else has problems too, lady. And I don't go around like screaming about them. Not even to my significant others. So
I can't fucking go to IHOP right now to get an omelet. Like, we all have problems right now.
Can you imagine the Patricia Arquette character if Boyhood had continued? Linklater hadn't stopped. He kept going year after year, and then in 2020 he has to shoot the section of the movie that's set in quarantine USA, and she would have been just bitching 24/7 about how she can't go to HEB, or that she went to HEB and all the toilet paper was gone, and it's all because she's a single mother. I just
while
enough.
Fucking Billie Eyelash or whatever just plays in the background because we have to set the mood of what time it is. So Patricia Arquette, Olivia packs up shop for wherever they're living at the beginning. I think it's the only like city that's not specifically stated that they live in, or township. Packs them up, moves them to Houston to be close to her mom. She's going to go back to school. This is where we start to see that Mason has, understandably so, he's got a rough situation at home, and he's struggling in school and just kind of having a hard time adjusting as a kid, which, everyone can relate to. But they've restarted their lives in Houston, and that puts them closer to, as we've talked about off air, the MVP, the true star of this movie, the shining light, the saving grace, Mr. Ethan Hawke.
Yeah, and ultimately the reason why I think Patricia Arquette can never really get on our good side, because she's always competing, unfortunately, against Ethan Hawke. And Ethan Hawke, this is so
losing battle, baby.
Better. Oh yeah. It's you don't bring somebody with the charisma of Ethan Hawke and cast him as the deadbeat dad unless you want the deadbeat dad to be the hero. And the problem is that if the deadbeat dad's gonna be the hero, then that automatically makes Patricia Arquette the villain. You know what I mean? Like, anytime, even when she's justified at being angry at Ethan Hawke, at complaining about the things that Ethan Hawke is not doing, we're still on Ethan Hawke's side because it's Ethan Hawke and he's so cool and he plays the guitar.
It's like the casting of Benjamin Bratt as Manny's biological father in Modern Family. It's like, okay, we get it. He abandoned his kid, but if you're going to have someone so fucking cool and suave, like, it's going to be really hard to root against this guy. Cast Benedict Cumberbatch as a fucking deadbeat dad. That I could get into booing. I'd be like, fuck this guy. He just shows up and he's very dry and get your bags. Let's go. And oh God, now I need that just to see Benedict Cumberbatch driving a GTO. But Ethan Hawke, we're introduced to him as he is in the kids' lives, I guess more so now that they're in Houston. And the opening scene with him is, or the first scene with him is he takes the kids bowling. And one of the most prophetic lines of the movie, and one of my favorites, is Mason Jr. is complaining about he wants the bumpers up on the bowling lane, and Ethan Hawke retorts, "Life doesn't give you bumpers," and I thought that was a fantastic line.
That should have been the tagline of the movie.
But then, to make sure you know what time period you're in, we go to them watching the news about the Iraqi war, and Ethan Hawke, Mason Sr., starts going off on his 9/11 conspiracies and whatnot. Again, just to make sure you know exactly what time period you're in.
Every 5 minutes, if not more often, Linklater just name drops, name checks some sort of event in American history, just so that you know where you are. Which would be the only way, really, that you would know. It
gets so much worse through this. I have like notes in all caps coming up in a little bit about this.
I just write, like, every now as the movie was going, I would write pandering, and then I would like write a list of things that he was name checking, and it's really because by now, obviously, we've gone a few years from when we started, and we're gonna keep jumping ahead. And it's not like he gives you any warning. There's no there's not a title screen that goes like 2 years later or whatever. It just one day Mason is there and he's a little kid, and then the next scene he has long hair and he's a teenager, and it's like if I hadn't been streaming it, I would have thought that the DVD or the Blu-ray was scratched and he was just skipping ahead. And so the only way that he shows you like where you are in time is by just dropping those stupid references that don't add up to anything really. That's the thing, because if it was a movie about what American history, like Forrest Gump, right? Forrest Gump is, it name checks American history as the story goes along, but it actually it's woven with the character's life. Here, no, it's just kind of, well, he's just doing it because it's the background, not because it matters. He could have been talking about 9/11. He could have been talking about Watergate. It wouldn't have changed the context of that scene.
In Forrest Gump, American history is the story. In Boyhood, it has nothing to do with it, but he just shoehorns it in. It doesn't affect Mason Jr.'s life at all that we have to, get fucking a long static shot of him playing Halo. Like, for fuck's sake, I get it. So, fair point, bringing up Forrest Gump. I think that's there's a lot of comparisons to that with this movie. I think more of those we'll get into in Real Talk. Kids are fighting for Mason Sr.'s attention. They're just so happy to see him. Who's not happy to see him is Olivia, his ex-wife, and just, berates him and emasculates him in front of his kids almost on sight because he was too busy being the cool dad. They didn't get their homework done and all that shit. But still, she has no time for him.
And just cut the man some slack. And that's the thing, right? If it was Benny Cumberbatch, we'd be on her side. This asshole took them out bowling, fed them French fries instead of a proper lunch or dinner, and kept them distracted so they wouldn't do their homework, made her life more complicated because he took them directly home instead of dropping them off at her mom's. But because it's Ethan Hawke, all we're thinking is just, man, it's how cool is it that he's just spending time with his kids, and they seem so excited to show him like their pictures and the rocks they're collecting. But also because as an audience member, it was just so welcome to have Ethan Hawke there livening things up. Because before he shows up, it's kind of a slog. And then he showed up and there's energy. Suddenly there's acting. We're not just stuck with the little kids. And so we subconsciously resent the fact that Patricia Arquette is bitching him out just for being cool.
Yep. Time goes on. Mason meets the doctor, the professor that Olivia's dating, Bill, and they end up getting married and merging their two families. He had two kids, and so they live in this mansion now, and things
That's
quickly...
such a bullshit cut too, right?
Yes.
She's attending one of his lectures with Mason there because he wasn't feeling well or something, and then
and like not to cut you off, but like I watched that scene through 2020 eyes, and I was like, bitch, why are you bringing him in public if he doesn't feel well? Keep him at home.
Quarantine yourself. And then it's actually two time jumps that happen almost at once, because one, when she goes to talk to the teacher, right, to introduce him to Mason, we didn't even know that they were dating, right? The movie just completely skipped from her fighting Ethan Hawke to her introducing her kid to, I guess, her boyfriend. We don't know what's happening, but
Yeah, I guess it's supposed to be implied that they're dating because he does the Biden. He puts his hand on her lower back, and Mason sees it and is like, "What the hell?"
2020, that man would be running as the Democratic nominee.
Jesus, don't remind me.
But then not even that, we cut from there. The wedding happens off screen, and the next thing we know, they're coming back from the honeymoon, and Mason and his sister are living in this new house with two step siblings. And you're like, what the fuck? Did I miss a chunk of the movie? This is supposed to be a huge development, right? Even if you're saying that, well, it's important for Patricia Arquette and she's not the main character in the movie, it's important for Mason too. That's a huge transition. It's not even that her mom got a new boyfriend. Her mom got a new husband.
That's where you're wrong, man. We don't have time to show that. We have to instead show like this long, meandering, meaningless shot of him dressed up as Harry Potter going to get a book.
Because that's what's important.
that's the real meat and potatoes. So this character Bill, he's a fucking asshole. What's the actor's name who played him? I guess I wasn't overly familiar with him. Marco Perella. Again, I'm not too familiar with him. He nails the role here of being unlikable.
Dude, Marco Perella, I think he runs, unsurprisingly, he's an Austin actor, if it's the guy I'm thinking of, and I always get emails from him.
You gotta be shitting me. Linklater casting someone from Texas?
Who would have thought? I think he runs an acting workshop because I always
Nice.
get emails from him from the mailing lists I'm on for casting news and all that stuff. But
He was on Walker Texas Ranger for the duration of the show, so good on him.
yeah, you're right that he nails it. I mean, at least I hope that he's acting, and it's not just that Linklater like he did with most of the cast here. He was just like, "Hey, just be yourself," and this guy turned out to be a drunken asshole.
He just showed up with like 4 handles of Tito's. All right, let's do it. So this is where I was talking about my theater experience was people laughing at very inappropriate things. The audience I saw it in, it was a pretty full house. They thought the Bill character was supposed to be comedic, and they like laughed at everything he did. And I was like, this guy's like a raging alcoholic who's beating this woman. Like, what the hell is wrong with y'all?
It's pretty fucked up. I understand up to a point because the movie hasn't been really dark and gritty up till now. It's been pretty lightweight. But then this guy, even when we meet this guy at first, he seems, kind of okay. But then it really ramps up his heel turn, to use one of your terms. It's just like he's an okay guy when they come back from the honeymoon, and then next time that Linklater just jumps ahead in time, he is a drunk that. I mean, you're right. It seems to imply that he's beaten Patricia Arquette, because there's a moment where Mason arrives from school and she's on the floor crying. And the guy's
it's
like,
shot like a fucking horror movie too, because the garage door is like halfway down, so you just see her like screaming on the ground, and then you just see his legs, like the mom and dad from Cow and Chicken, come into frame, and he's just standing there. Like, I was surprised the music didn't hit this big crescendo of like, dang.
It's and then the next scene he's openly drinking in front of his kids, and he just throws the glasses at them, throws one at Mason, throws one at his own kid. And I was wondering if, because of the way that Linklater shot this, right, where he was shooting little chunks at a time, he would shoot this sequence and then wait and shoot the next one next year when Mason was older and everybody was older. And it doesn't surprise me that he would kind of lose the thread, the tone at times. And it's by the time that he got to the drunk stepdad chapter of the story, I mean, it's been what, like 2-3 years since he started the movie, and he might have not had it in the back of his head what he started like tonally. And so the movie gets really dark in sort of an inappropriate way when compared to the first 30 minutes of the movie.
Well, and we're talking about this too. There's like years that elapse while he's living, like while Bill and Olivia are married. It's not like this short, Britney Spears 24-hour wedding or marriage, rather. It's like years and years of abuse and neglect that this guy is imparting on them. And fortunately, we do get a reprieve, a break in the Bill saga, and we get another scene with Ethan Hawke, another sequence with him, and this is one of the big notes I had about it, because I thought this was actually very well done. He takes his kids out for a day in Houston, and what do you do in Houston? You go to the aquarium and you go see the Rangers play at Minute Maid Park. That made me nostalgic, just because the ballpark where they go to the baseball game.
Yes,
that is where the Royal Rumble was that I went to in January, and that was like the last mass gathering that I was at, and I was like, oh man, I remember when we were able to do things.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I didn't go to the Royal Rumble, and I still had that exact same feeling, just seeing a whole bunch of people congregate, which is crazy, because I'd like to think, in the big scheme of things as they are right now, I haven't gotten to the point where I am really panicking too much about the future. Like, I've seen people online that have already hit that point, and we're maybe like a month in, and like you said, we probably have like 2, maybe 3 months more. Mm-hmm. So right now, at least, I'm not the kind of person that's thinking, man, life is never going to be the same, our world has changed forever and all that stuff. But watching that scene in the movie where everybody, it's the kind of thing that you definitely can't see today, and if you did, it would have a different connotation, because you would be so scared about the way that the virus would be spreading throughout that big crowd. But I was watching them at that baseball game, and I was thinking, man, I do wonder if maybe life has changed forever, and now Boyhood would really be looked at as some sort of a
time capsule,
like an artifact of history that shows how our society used to be. We were not
It's going to
afraid
be
of.
shown in, they're going to show this movie in schools 20 years from now over like a 2-week period. Just watch, an hour every day. And this is how we used to live. See
All
that?
the teachers crying and all the children just watching in puzzlement. It's like they're touching.
The only thing that kids, years from now still understand is the liquor store, because of course we're still going to have those. So what I was mentioning, one of the things I did like is when he's driving through downtown Houston and he's talking to his kids and explaining, hey, we have to have real conversations. We're a family, blah, 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 blah. What I noticed was the background, the scrolling shots were actual footage of downtown Houston. I've spent so much time in downtown Houston, I can spot things down there. And the big thing that obviously the lightning rod that caught my attention was you clearly see the convention center in the background. So Linklater just got, I guess, all this B-roll footage, just hung his camera out his window when driving around downtown Houston and then planted that in the green screen. So I thought that was a nice touch. But again,
25% of this movie is just B-roll that he shot while he was out with his family.
Yes. The A roll is it accounted for one reel of the movie. So we get the movie trying more and more to demonize Mason Sr., Ethan Hawke, because we see his shitty house that he lives in with some musician roommate. I think there's like a bong on the table and, beer bottles. But still, it's just Ethan Hawke, they're trying to make him seem like the bad guy. And we go from that to the next scene where he has like, to me, his Oscar scene when Mason asks him, there's no real magic in the world, is he? And then he just goes on about, the aquatic life of the world and all the magic that does exist. I think he says something like, goblins and fairies might not be real, but there is magic in the world. And it's just this fantastic monologue.
Yeah, it's not only touching and shows him as a cool parent, even though he lives in a dump, but also because you're contrasting it once again with Patricia Arquette's life, where they live in a nice house and they have more opportunities, they're financially well off, but she lives with a drunk asshole that constantly abuses her kids verbally and physically. I think that this is where he gets to the haircut, right?
Yeah, he just makes Mason get his head shaved. And it's not even like, they didn't even book like a hair versus hair match and make some money off of it. He just takes him to the barber shop and makes him get his head shaved, and he's just fucking reprimanding him the whole time and making all these really snide comments. He's basically commentating the haircut that he's getting and just taking all these digs at him. And Mason's just like, at this point he was a little kid, so I try to cut him slack for his acting ability, but it looks like he watched The Omen once and Linklater was like, all right, make that face like the little kid. And
Mason, how crazy is it? Look, we're about maybe a third of the movie in, and we've barely talked about Mason and his sister. And it's because, especially Mason, he's such a non-character. And I understand, he's a little kid. And the idea, I guess the approach that Linklater is going for is that, well, he's just going to be an observer. He doesn't really have much going on, at least until he gains some agency, which I guess that's how it works with most kids, right? When you're a kid, you're just kind of at the mercy of whatever your parents and everybody else that's older than you is doing. But funnily enough, he doesn't take that approach with the sister, because they basically cast Lorelai Linklater as Jar Jar Binks in this movie. She is just annoying and won't shut up, and she's making sure that every scene she has something to say. Like, she is really bratty, and of course she brings out the worst.
she's like
when they're around.
if Garden State was a person. That's Samantha. Because like the fucking our introduction to her is her throwing a pillow at Mason, and then she starts singing "Oops, I Did It Again."
Yep.
In a way only a little kid could, in a really nasally voice, and it's just grating.
That gave me Judd Apatow flashbacks. Because I remember when we did the This Is 40
wait,
episode.
the "Oops, I Did It Again" or the nepotism?
The nepotism. More than the nepotism, actually, just the sheer irresponsibility of doing that to your child, because it's not her fault. She's a little kid. She's just doing what her dad's telling her to do, and he put his daughter in a position where she was gonna have to live with that. He was like, yeah, just do it, it'll be cute. And not just that, but you're stuck to this shit for the next 12 years. So he's the father, he's the adult, he should have known better.
Yeah. So again, the head shaving, the non-consensual head shaving of Mason leads to him, kind of having a come to Jesus moment with Olivia, his mom, and saying, he made me do this. I tried to call you, but you didn't answer. And basically, I hate this guy, and why did you marry him? And she says like something like, so we could have a family, and he's like, we already had a family, and gets out of the car. I have in my notes here, and parenthetically it says, at this point my sympathy began drying up, and that was in reference to Olivia, because then like a couple years elapse. He's clearly a couple years older, and this is the aforementioned shot of him having thrown her down in the garage or some shit, and him just pounding hooch just by the glass full. And this is where he throws the glass at Mason, and it's just like, it's such a weird thing, because you do have to, I am sympathetic towards the cause of the single mother, and I can't fathom the burden, or not burden, but the toll that takes on someone's life, having especially two kids. Why she had a second one after everything was already shit after the first, I don't know, but
yeah, I was wondering that. Yeah.
That's yeah, we'll get to that in real talk. So I am sympathetic towards that. What I'm not sympathetic towards is someone who just year after year continuously runs themselves into a brick wall, or it's Steve-O from Jackass. I don't have sympathy for him when he gets hurt, because he just does this stupid shit over and over again. She's been with this dude for years, knowing he's bad news bears, and just lets her kids around this guy, and then it leads to the next scene. I have my notes here. Olivia leaves her kids with this maniac and takes his money. So I guess after this,
she turns to the camera. She's like, "This is Patricia Arquette, and this is Jackass."
So yeah, I guess after he threatens Mason, it becomes too much for Olivia. So what does she do? Leaves Mason alone with him, and she takes off and takes his money, drains his accounts or some shit, and then just leaves her kids with him for several days.
Yeah, and the guy is by now he's devolved. I mean, he's just a total. He doesn't have a semblance of a human being by now. He's
and
just,
it's not there's no subtlety anymore. He's just become self-parody of a villain.
Yep. Yeah, he's like, give me your phones. And he's checking through the phones. It's like, did he call you? Did he not call you? Did she?
Do you know why that scene was in there? Just so we could see that they had fucking Motorola Razr phones, so we could know what time period it was.
Yeah, Lorelai Linklater gets a phone call in the middle of that scene, and it's playing whatever the latest Britney Spears or Christina Aguilera single was at the time.
Yeah, it should have. Yeah, exactly. It should have shown like her phone ringing, and it would be like, Jesus, I don't know, lean with it, rock with it, or something like that of that time period.
Just to give Patricia Arquette and her character some credit, I really put the blame of it on Richard Linklater again. Because he's the one that's making these choices. He's the one that's deciding what to show us and what not to show us, and how to arrange it. So it is his fault that we feel this way, because a story that was really interested in drumming up sympathy for the Patricia Arquette character would keep the focus on her, so that we see what's going on through her mind and kind of follow her actions in a more logical way. Instead, because he's just giving us all these quick cuts through the narrative, to us it feels like she's not doing anything, right? Mm-hmm. When you jump 2 years ahead and nothing has changed, or even worse, like things have gotten worse. This guy has gotten more abusive, and she's just sitting there, and you don't tell us what happened during the 2 years that have elapsed that might have caused her to still stay in this marriage. Then we can't help it, but our assumption is that she hasn't done anything. Yeah. And I think that if you follow a similar story in real life, or a story in a movie that actually cared about her female character, about this single mom, then you would put in the work to fill in those gaps, so that we can actually follow step by step what her rationale was, and how in her mind she's doing this to protect her kids, or whatever. I shouldn't have to be to come up with those reasons, those justifications for the character's behavior. The movie should be giving them to me, but the movie doesn't.
Yeah, well, when it finally does, when it explains her whole, why she was the way she was at the end, the line about "I just thought there'd be more," you figure out she's just a fucking millennial. Like, she might have been like a boomer age, but she's a millennial just because she just expected life to she just expected everything to get better without her doing anything about it. And that, I think, outlines and puts a close to the Bill chapter pretty well, if she just thought it would get better and by doing nothing. So eventually she has no choice but to just barge into the house with her backup there, and just take the kids and just go just on the run.
It's such an irresponsible thing to do too, because you don't really, based on what you've seen of the Bill character, of the drunk professor, you don't know that he's not going to get more violent, and it's just kind of, she lucks out that he doesn't. He just lets Mason and his sister go. because he's blocking the door, and it's not like she has an actual, she's not there with the
He
police.
gives up pretty easily. He's like, nope. And she's like, please. And he's like, okay. So closing, kind of quick side note as we close out the Bill chapter. The liquor store that they go into, the gentleman who works there, did you make the connection to that at all?
No, who is he?
He's I don't know the guy's name, but he's the same guy that works in the liquor store in Dazed and Confused.
Oh, I've seen that movie once.
What?
I didn't care much for it.
What?
Oh, no, wait, no. Dazed and Confused is good. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Fast Times at Richmond High, I didn't care much for.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's fine. But yeah, Dazed and Confused that'll come back up in Real Talk. So moving along, she takes the kids, moves in with one of her friends temporarily. This is where we have one of Patricia Arquette's breakdowns, because after fucking 5 years of being with this guy, she just now realized maybe it was a bad decision. And this is where I have in all caps to set the time frame of where we're at now. We just smash cut to the kids, Samantha and Mason, putting up Obama signs in the yard, and Jesus,
the most expensive time capsule ever made.
So they're walking around. We get some comedic moment of some, massive conservative saying, "No, you can't put that sign in my yard," and it's all being led by Mason Sr. Ethan Hawke. He's very big on the Obama train. As God, this similarly to the shot in Minute Maid Park, this made me nostalgic for a much simpler time politically, and
when the choices were a little better.
Not only that, but when we had someone to respect in office. And I mean, the two are coincided. Like when I saw that Obama sign, like I just remember thinking like, oh, Barry, I wish you were still here. You would have gotten us through this time. So the Obama signs is cultural reference number 1. 2, we cut to, I guess they're at the bowling alley again. And God, this was like, there's a Parks and Rec that Tom Haverford just forcefully brings up shit, and it reminded me of this because Ethan Hawke's like, I saw on your Facebook page, and like, we get it, it's the mid 2000s. So this is again just Ethan Hawke bonding with his kids, bullshit, blah 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 blah. It segues to Mason Sr. and Mason Jr. going on a camping trip together. The shots here are really good. I really enjoyed this sequence cinematically, and but yeah. Just in case, the Obama and Facebook thing didn't do it for you, to know specifically what year we're in, we get Mason Jr. explaining that Tropic Thunder, Dark Knight, and Pineapple Express were the 3 best movies of the year. Like, relevant of nothing going on. He just has to say that. And he was wrong. It was Tropic Thunder, Dark Knight, and WALL-E. Those were the 3 best movies of that year.
This is also where, I think towards the end of the scene, Ethan Hawke goes, do you think they'll ever make another Star Wars movie? It's like, fucking stop, please.
Oh, yeah. It was a young J.J. Abrams was, a stagehand. He was a key grip for that scene. And he's like, one day, my friend, one day. Yeah, they talk about Star Wars, and it's just, again,
but it's also
a lot of nothing.
It shows you how the important stuff is getting left out of the picture, because I was expecting to get some sort of, you're shoehorning so much information that doesn't matter. Can you shoehorn some of the important stuff too? Like, how did Ethan Hawke feel about the fact that his son was living with an abusive alcoholic for years? It's never mentioned. Towards the end of the movie, there's kind of like a throwaway line where Ethan Hawke just kind of shrugs. But I would have liked to know if he had any opinions on the matter, if he ever brought it up with Patricia Arquette, if he ever tried to get his kids out, if he didn't care. That to me was vital, and especially this second time, because when you're watching it the first time, you don't know what's happening, so you're kind of like catching up. But this time, to me, watching the entire Bill chapter of Mason's life and knowing how what a positive influence in Mason's life Ethan Hawke was, I was constantly thinking, okay, where is he right now? There's no way that he's so clueless about what's going on, because Mason seems to have a good relationship with him. So Mason would have told him. And if Mason didn't, his daughter, Mason's sister, definitely would have. And yet it's never addressed. But we have time to just do the bullshit pop culture references. Yeah,
that's exactly the point. Like, in a real life situation, Ethan Hawke would have kicked in the door with a 12 gauge and been like, get the fuck away from my son. But that doesn't have to, we wouldn't know what year it was if that happened. So So we're in San Marcos now, which it made me realize, God, it's been forever since I've been to San Marcos. When I first moved to Central Texas in 2002, you could get from San Marcos to downtown Austin in 25 minutes maybe. Now, like, that's the whole point. San Marcos is a great little town, but I haven't been there because it takes a fucking hour to get there now. And it's probably like a 20 mile, if that. That's me inserting my own timestamp into things, letting you know.
Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody else is doing it in this movie.
Stockholm Syndrome. So, anyway, relevant of nothing, much like a lot of this movie. So, he's in middle school. It sucks. Real talk, Contrarians Corner, whatever. Any kid can attest that fucking 5th to 8th grade is the worst time period of anyone's life ever. So that you could have like the best parents in the world, and that's when you're the worst version of yourself you're ever going to be. So that understandably so, shit sucks. He eventually gets to high school. Olivia is a professor now at one of the local schools. She ends up dating one of her former students who's a vet.
The poor man's Bradley Cooper.
Oh God. Thank you. Yeah, this. I guess Cooper was busy, so they just got him his non-union working equivalent. What is this guy's name? Brad Hawkins. So he's even got the Brad part down.
It was like, call me B-Hawk.
So anyway, if you've watched the first 7 hours of this movie like we had, you can see already this is bad because he's like this narcissistic asshole, and I think the first time you see him, he's got a beer or something. So you know that's coming.
You know that Patricia Arquette knows how to pick him by now.
Yeah. Ethan Hawke Mason Sr. is now remarried with a new baby. He sold the GTO. He's got a fantastic mustache. And, like, the wardrobe here, though, was so ridiculous. Like, Linklater's like, all right, we have to establish that he's a father now that got his balls cut off. So we're not only going to give him a minivan, but he's going to have a mustache and then put this really shitty fleece on him, this really bad sweater. It'll really nail home the point. Again, it's Ethan Hawke steals every part of this movie he's in, so everything he does in this sequence is fantastic.
He made a minivan look cool. Well, as much as he could, though. That's probably the most soul-crushing shot in the movie. It's the reveal that now he drives a minivan.
Yes.
I'm glad that the movie acknowledges it, and Ethan Hawke is such a good actor that he can really play the full range of emotions that come with not just admitting that now he drives a minivan, but having to tell his son that he sold the cool car.
Yes. And during his like soliloquy of why he sold the GTO and like moving on with life and whatnot, you know, you said Boyhood : Pandering would be the name of the movie. I'd argue it was Boyhood : Shoehorn, because this is just we get just for no reason the stepmom, now his new wife, watching Lady Gaga on the iPhone and like asking Samantha like, your mom lets you watch this? God, fuck off.
This is I just looked out of my notes and so that I could remember where we were as far as Mason goes, because like I said, Mason is almost a non-character through most of the movie. This is when he starts showing some personality, and unfortunately, it's not good.
No,
I don't blame him. He's had a rough go at his upbringing, but I just wish that Linklater had chosen a different characterization, because what this movie needs right now is something to fill the void when Ethan Hawke is not on screen. And now this kid is, 15, I think, by now. So he should be stepping into those shoes. He should be starting to take control of the movie and be our protagonist for real. And but he's just like a little shit. He's the stereotypical teenager that you run into in real life. You don't want to see that in the movies. I don't need to go to the movies to watch this kid be all moody and sulky with his fucking long hair covering half his face. It's like, it makes me feel old, even though I'm in the right. He's just, he can't enjoy anything. Ethan Hawke is telling him about this cool mixed, it's not a mixtape, it's a mixed CD that he made him. And the responses are monosyllabic. It's like, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll try it. Fuck that. I don't need that in my movies. You have the power to create characters that are more interesting than what you see in real life. You already are giving us plenty of real life with your stupid pop culture references. So the least you can do is just craft a teenage character that is compelling enough to carry us through the next 2 hours of the movie that are left.
Yeah. They end up visiting their now stepmom's family, and if they did say the name of the town or city, I missed it, but clearly East Jesus Nowhere, Texas, where shooting guns and going to church is pretty much all you do. So get a long sequence of that.
It's Texas.
Yep. Mason's a lazy high school student is my next note. So I think this is where we fade into him in high school, and he's getting into photography. So he's got to have an artsy twinge to him. So, but one of his teachers cuts a promo on him saying, you have a lot of talent, but you're lazy. The type of speech we've heard in so many fucking movies before.
Did you get the feeling that all the adult supporting characters, they were not given the latest version of the script? they were given like, I don't know, like the 5th draft before they really punched up the dialogue.
Agreed. But Mason goes through high school, does photography for the school newspaper, does typical high school shit, goes to parties, kisses girls, blah, 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 blah. I have in all caps, oh no, she married another angry drunk. And Jim is B-Hawk, and he's a corrections officer. He just likes pounding his beers. One of the nights where Mason Jr. comes home late from a party, this shot always fucking bothered me. So Jim's sitting outside waiting for him. I remember thinking this the first time I saw it. Jim's outside waiting for him, and to establish that he's drunk, there's a cascade, a litany of crushed beer cans at his feet. Now the problem with this is there's no cooler. There's no cooler by his side, which means he's had to have gotten up and gone inside to the refrigerator each time to get a beer, but just left the cans behind, I guess, to peacock and intimidate Mason when he got back. But there was no point for those empty beer cans to just be there, other than, much like everything else in this movie, just beat you over the head with the situation at hand.
Well, Alex, how do you know he's a corrections officer? Because he's wearing a shirt that says corrections officer.
In big orange font. Go forward a few years, Jim's out of the picture. Mason has a job now. I actually did perk up at this point because I'm going to butcher this gentleman's name, but Richard Robichow? Sorry, Rick, if I'm mispronouncing that, but the manager at the restaurant he works at, it was also... it's Bernie. Who's the woman in Bernie? Shirley MacLaine. It's her representative of a state in that movie. And that guy's I assume he's not like a full-time actor, because I've just kind of seen him in a few of Linklater's projects. He might be, I don't know, but he's really good and smarmy, and really good at his southern drawl delivery. So I was happy to see him again, and he makes the most of his time on screen. But again, like you said, at this point, Mason Jr. has just become such a vacuum of charisma.
Yep. It's just everybody, all the supporting characters are just fighting a losing battle to keep their scenes alive because they're sharing it with him. And whereas he used to be a pretty a cute kid that didn't say much, now he is a surly teenager that has lines. Mm-hmm. And that just brings everything down.
Yep. And he visits Austin with his then girlfriend, and all this did was, I don't know if I've mentioned this on air on the podcast, but for me personally, for Alex Mattis, my top goal of 2020 was to figure out how to get out of Austin because I don't like it here anymore. And all this sequence in the movie did was further solidify that, because they're celebrating all what they perceive to be the quirks and charms of Austin that I am just completely over. So thank you, Richard Linklater, for keeping my eye on the prize.
Yeah, but this is, I blame this on just what they've done with the Mason character, because he is the worst. At this point, he is, it's gotten even worse because now he has, like his parents, now he has full-on speeches. Now he has thoughts about life, and he's letting us know about them. And so when they're driving to Austin from San Marcos, he has the most pretentious, fucking half-baked philosophical debate with his girlfriend about machines and the time we spent staring at screens and all this stuff. And that's once again, I don't go to the movies to go through this bullshit because I hear it regularly for free. And it's annoying enough at the time. Then his position about, he thinks that he's being so clever, so profound. It's like, shut the fuck up. Yes, we spend a lot of time looking at our phones and watching TV. Look, you're not making any new points, and you're not making any sort of huge statement by turning off your Facebook.
Dude,
I don't care.
Here's the point. If I'm going to watch a movie that the characters are, this movie is supposed to be about high school kids, I want something fun and light and completely out of the realm of possibility. So like super bad is what I want. What I don't want is a movie about high school kids where I listen to them talk like dumb high school kids. And that's exactly what the scene is just them talking like dumbass fucking 16, 17, 18-year-olds that have no foresight or no idea of what really matters in the world, and are very they're life virgins, I guess would be the way of putting it. And that's all this is, and it goes on for fucking ever, and they just talk about all this idealistic bullshit.
Yeah, and the movie doesn't even, the movie's behind them. That's the worst part, I guess. That's what makes it really annoying, is that I know that the movie's expecting me to walk away from this sequence thinking, man, that Mason kid, he's really precautious, he's really smart, he really knows what's up, as opposed to the rest of his generation that's just dumb and doesn't think about these things. It's like, no, he's just like every other teenager that thinks that they're coming up with this shit for the very first time, and the things that he's hot shit because he can take pictures and because he can go against the grain. Fuck off. That's really, bring back Ethan Hawke. I want to know what he's doing with his hot wife and his new kid.
So Mason graduates high school and he's going to go to college, and I don't know if they name it, but reading it, he went to Sol Russ, which a friend of mine that I went to high school with went there. Gorgeous country out there. Graduates high school, yada yada yada. I know I called out Ethan Hawke's Oscar scene earlier, was explaining magic in the world. May have to rethink that now, going back over my notes, as I think this is probably his Oscar scene where he's at, was it Antone's they were at?
Oh, I thought it was somebody's house. Are you talking about the graduation party?
Oh, okay. I'm moving forward from that. When him and his dad go out for the night, is it Antone's they go to? Do you remember?
I don't know where they went, yeah. But I know what you mean. Yeah, when he talks to him and tells him that basically nobody knows anything.
Yes, love it. And he hits him with, what's the point? And he's just like, I don't fucking know. No one does. We're just, I think he even like verbatim says, we're all just winging it. But yeah.
That's that little speech kind of rescues the scene, because even somebody with the charisma of Ethan Hawke had trouble with what happens earlier, which is Mason is complaining about his girlfriend breaking up with him and leaving him for a college student or whatever. And Ethan Hawke's response is basically, yeah, well, women are fucking bitches. It's like, Jesus, man.
Yeah. Because he tries to give him like, scintillating, riveting, like life advice at first, but he just keeps going on and on and on about the breakup. And then he's like, listen, bitches be crazy. We move forward in the life of Olivia, as now she's going to be moving out into her own apartment because she doesn't need that big house anymore. She meets with the kid, says, you got to come get your shit or donate or throw it away, yada, yada, yada. Here, my note says worker from earlier in the movie is now she's all that. That's my actual note because the manager of the restaurant comes up and he's just like, hey, remember me? And you're like, no. Earlier in the movie when they were having work done on the house, this is like an hour and a half previous to what we're talking about.
It was a whole husband ago.
Yes. And this construction worker, helping with the plumbing of the house, she tells him offhand, you're smart, you should go to school. And apparently, that set off this peristaltic chain reaction of him going to school and becoming successful. And it's so weird because we just talked about how much of a bitch Olivia comes off as in this. And then he just is like, you guys should listen to your mom. She's really smart. And it's like, no, she's fucking not.
What are the odds? Really, what bothered me the most is what are the odds that they're going to run into each other again? It's how small is San Marcos? Maybe I'm just missing the point here. But to me, it's like I used to live in College Station. And even in College Station, the odds that you would run into the dude that did your plumbing once are pretty tiny. And that he would remember you. That you would remember him. I mean, it's just the entire thing. It's been years. It's so unlikely. For a movie that's trying to be very down to earth to a fault, right? It's just so realistic that we're not even fucking gonna have a plot. It's just gonna be life. Well, this is not the kind of stuff that happens in life. It sticks out like a sore thumb because this actually feels like a contrivance in the big canvas that Linklater has painted. That this minor character would show up again and have a very important impact in Patricia Arquette's life.
Yeah, it's like you said, it sticks out as so fantastical comparatively speaking to the rest of the movie. It's very, very silly. And again, you've been with this movie for 9 hours at this point, so you know that Patricia Arquette on the surface may seem like good-natured, and she's obviously a professor, so she has, as they say, book smarts, but she's a fucking train wreck of a person that's repeatedly made bad decisions her whole life. So for him to be like, she's
I guess
smart.
we should be glad that she actually shows some growth and doesn't marry this guy.
No, if it would have showed a shot of him, taking a shot of vodka, then she would have, dropped her pants and been like, all right, this guy. The aforementioned, I just thought there would be more scene of Patricia Arquette seeing Mason Jr. off as he goes to school. I mean, it's a semi-relatable scene, but way too late for this character. Of all the things we've watched her go through and the poor decisions she's made, for her to just say the reason she did it all was just because she thought life was just going to work out the way she wanted it to. It's like...
well, I think that, if we had spent more time with her, maybe this would hit us harder. If we actually had experienced her making those decisions instead of seeing the consequences of those decisions on the way to something that was a lot less interesting, which is Mason's life. To me, it's just like, well, I just got the greatest hits version of your life, lady, and now I'm just seeing you regret it all. Well, I have no emotional connection to any of it, so,
So Mason Jr. heads off to college, and this is where we get the playing of Hero by Family of the Year, which was prominently used in all of the promotional material for this movie, the trailers and the TV spots and whatnot. So much so, I enjoyed that song so much that at the time it inspired me to get that album that the song was on, and it is fantastic. So the movie's best contribution to me personally was getting me into Family of the Year, as they are a very good band. So he gets to college, he unpacks in his dorm room. This was probably the most personal renaissance with this movie right here, was looking at that dorm room and thinking how much it was like mine. And I was like, God damn, I slept in a brick room for a year. It's just funny. But it's so acceptable when you're that age, because it's like, hell yeah, I'm out of the house. Look at me. I'm getting all sappy like Richard Linklater here. So Mason immediately becomes friends with these fucking burnouts, and they just go out into the mountains and just ramble about incoherent bullshit for 10 minutes, and then the movie ends.
Did you think, because they go on a hike and they go through some mountains before they get to the spot where the movie ends, did it look to you like they green screened that hike?
Yes,
because it did to me, and it was, we were just praising how good the movie looked earlier, but maybe because it looks so good, this stands out. It's the second thing to just take out like a sore thumb right next to the plumber that becomes a restaurant manager. It's just the green screen mountains.
Yeah. And what's the closing dialogue? Something about,
I have it written down, my friend.
Okay. Take it away.
Well, okay, so I wrote down the final line, but it's just, they're doing the same bullshit that we were criticizing Mason for earlier, where he's talking about really stupid shit as if it was really profound.
Yeah.
But this time he's found a girl that plays along, and she goes, you know how people say that you have to seize the moment? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, well, I'm thinking that that's not right. What really happens is that the moment seizes us. And they both have a pause, and they go like, whoa. And then Mason goes, this is the final line of the movie. He goes, you're right, because it's always right now.
God.
Cut to credits. Jesus Christ, what?
Someday plays over the PA in the theater as the title credits begin to roll, or the closing credits, excuse me. Yeah,
it took us almost 3 hours to get to that pearl of wisdom. It's always right now. That's like the end of Cats the musical, when Judi Dench looks at the screen and says, "A cat is not a dog." It's just that level of really. It's so obvious. And the thing is, I understand a little bit that Richard Linklater was kind of stuck with his choices, right? It's just, he committed to this narrative from the very beginning, and he committed to these actors. And the problem is that this closing scene, and some of the other scenes that he saddles the Mason character with, are really hard to pull off, because that amount of bullshit that he's spewing can only be handled by certain actors, such as Ethan Hawke. If Ethan Hawke was playing Mason Jr., this would work. It's just like he can make the deadbeat dad likable. He can make the pretentious teenager likable. Unfortunately, he's not a teenager anymore, so you couldn't have been able to do it. But that line, "It's always right now," if it was a young Ethan Hawke saying it, you'd be like, all right, it's stupid, but I buy it.
This is like if you gave Judah Freelander the closing speech that Tommy Lee Jones has in No Country for Old Men. It's just like these words are so preposterous that it's only going to work with like elite tier once in a lifetime talent. All respect to Eller Coltrane here. I mean, he was kind of trained on the job with this whole thing, but he's not in a position to execute such absurd dialogue.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where I could be wrong, but I've always gotten the feeling that Linklater was kind of making it up as he went along. Much like in our last episode, where we were talking about how there's no way that when they made the first Hangover, they knew that that Marshall was gonna be a character in the third movie played by John Goodman. I don't think that when Richard Linklater set up to make this movie, when he started shooting with baby Mason and much younger Patricia Arquette and Ethan Hawke, he didn't know that it was all going to culminate in "It's Always Right Now." I think that when he was like 10 years into this project, he was like, we need to wrap this fucker up, and I don't know what to do because I've run out of pop culture references, and I'm looking at all the stuff that we've shot, and I don't see a through line that I can take to any sort of significant payoff. So how about they do drugs, and they just...
Lorelai, write the closing scene of this movie for me. I'm done. I think at this point... At this point, he like realized how much film he had shot, and like I just imagined like the movie was wrapping up, and then he went into a warehouse and saw like just all the boxes of film, and he's like, "Oh fuck, we got to wrap this up quick." So, yeah, that was Boyhood.
It's always right now in Boyhood.
All right, you ready to move this along to Real Talk?
Let's do Real Talk.
Yep. Will you give me the little birthday present for Mason?
Yeah, babe.
All right, this one needs a little explanation, okay? Open it up. I call that the Beatles Blackout. All right, what it is the best of John, Paul, George, and Ringo solo post-breakup.
Thanks.
Yeah, basically I put the band back together for you. You know, when you ever listen to too much of the solo stuff, it kind of becomes a drag, you know? But you put them next to each other, right? And they start to elevate each other. And then you can hear it. It's the Beatles. You know?
I don't know. I think I always just like Paul the best.
It doesn't matter. You know, you're missing the point. There is no favorite Beatle. That's what I'm saying. It's in the balance. That's what made them the greatest fucking rock bands in the world. Okay? You know, and there's this decade of music out there that's been scattered. All right? And now it has been carefully found, arranged, and ordered for you by your loving father.
Very arranged and very organized over and over again by your loving father.
Yes. So, I mean, look at that. Top of volume 2, first 4 tracks. You got Band on the Run, into My Sweet Lord, into Jealous Guy, into Photograph. Come on. It's like the perfect segue. You got Paul, who takes you to the party. George, who talks to you about God. John, who says, no, it's about love and pain. And then Ringo, who just says, hey, can we enjoy what we have while we have it? It's a good record. I shit you not.
Cool.
Excellent. We are now both recording for Real Talk for Boyhood, a movie released on July 11th of 2014. The estimated budget that I was able to find was $4 million. Box office return of around $60 million. This is it didn't even make a third of what The Hangover 3 made. Suck it, Richard Linklater. Written and directed by Rick, Austin's own Richard Linklater, of such notable films as Dazed and Confused and School of Rock with Jack Black. Where are we at here? Nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress, Best Original Screenplay, fuck off, Best Film Editing at the 2015 Academy Awards. The only one that it won was Patricia Arquette for Best Supporting Actress. I remember at the time, the group of us, you, me, Curtis, Eddie, having discussions about the how the merit of that was, or how it was kind of unfair to judge this decade body of work versus just these people that were on set for 3 weeks of their life. Here nor there.
I mean, it's part of the conversation, I guess.
Yeah,
it's you're inviting that kind of argument or consideration when you set off to make a movie this way.
So Patricia Arquette beat out Laura Dern in Wild, Keira Knightley in The Imitation Game, Emma Stone in Birdman, and Meryl Streep in Into the Woods. Ethan Hawke, who, real talk, Contrarians Corner, whatever, I assume we're in agreement, is the highlight of the movie.
Easily. He is the Ken Jeong of this Boyhood franchise.
He lost to J.K. Simmons in Whiplash, but as we talked about off air, that's a hard one to argue because he is fucking outstanding in that movie. Linklater lost out on Best Director, which is the only thing I would consider giving to this movie out of the categories selected. He lost to Alejandro Iñárritu for Birdman, and of course that was the year Birdman won Best Picture, which I might like Whiplash more personally than Birdman, but out of the movies selected, that definitely is a fine choice. And Birdman also won Best Original Screenplay. So, a movie that set the world on fire, at least the critical world. It is 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. That does mean there was 3% of the people that submitted reviews that did not care for it. So those that had some shit to talk, what did they say, Julio?
Let's get to the shit talking. Like I said, there weren't that many, but here's 4 that are a good representation of what the negatives on Rotten Tomatoes are. Starting with Tony Macklin from TonyMacklin.net, who says, Boyhood, concept A, execution C-. I don't know if that's gonna match your grade at the end of this podcast, but we'll see. Sarah Mars from Cinesnark says, I found it boring and unengaging. Just a collection of, hey, remember when moments, as opposed to actual introspection and exploration of what it means to grow up.
That's what we said pretty much all of the first half.
Yes. I can't imagine it's not an easy point to make, and yet I remember as we ease into real talk, I remember not really, if I noticed it, it didn't bother me the way it bothered me this time around. So, I don't know. I guess Sarah was ahead of the curve, at least for me there. Matt Pace from Red Eye says, it's easy to watch the film and recall similar moments in your own life. That's not enough. The film needs to inspire reflection, not just recollection. That's also a very good point. And finally, Victoria Alexander from Las Vegas Informer says, if you support your family picking lettuce, your life is more interesting than Linklater's family.
Jesus. That was like a personal one.
I don't know. And the thing is she saying, like, your family picks lettuce and you support them, or you support your family by picking lettuce yourself? Either way, I guess both things are supposed to be more interesting than Linklater's family. And, I don't know. I think that you're judging Linklater's family on one movie of his.
Yeah. It's as much as we jest about nepotism and shit, that's always going after the family. It's not like This Is 40 in the sense that Lorelei Linklater, for most of what she does, adds positive contributions, unlike in This Is 40 where Judd Apatow's kids kind of bring down what they're part of. That's a bit different in terms of if you want to go about it that way.
But it also feels like This Is 40. We're just saying this, not really having a personal relationship with either of them, Apatow or Linklater, but it felt like This Is 40 was a lot more of Apatow just putting his life out there, as opposed to Boyhood, which was more Linklater putting, I don't know that it's his life, it's more like, hey, this is what's happening right now at the time that we're shooting the movie. So without really having much of an opinion on it, at least that's how it felt to me.
Linklater's from Houston, okay. He lives in Austin. I said Austin's own earlier. Don't want to piss off any Texans, but I do. A friend of the podcast, Reed. I remember him telling me a story about when he worked for AFS, like going into Richard Linklater's office, and he just had a few boxes with the film from Boyhood in it, and they were just kind of like labeled like what year it was. I just thought that was kind of a cool story, but yeah, I mean, Richard Linklater, we've talked about him a lot. We always bring up the Before trilogy. I mean, Dazed and Confused is amazing and a much better version of this story. School of Rock is great. I love Bernie. I rewatched Bernie recently, and that's probably one of my more favorite movies of the past decade. I honestly, that's one of those, we were talking about Oscar snubs on our last episode, and I really think Jack Black should have got a nomination for that movie. What some of these movies have in common that I'm listing here, Dazed and Confused, Bernie, School of Rock, and I don't remember any of the Before movies having any type of egregious runtime. He being Richard Linklater thrives and succeeds in condensed format. I think when he doesn't restrain himself, and this is really the only example we have, is Boyhood, and I think it shows that things just kind of wander off and meander, which is hard to say, because do you think that was the point of this movie, or do you think it just at one point became self-indulgent?
No, I was about to say that I would imagine that this movie's defenders, maybe even Linklater himself, would tell you that the meandering is the point, that this movie is not interested, by design, it's not interested in having a plot, having a story. This is just supposed to reflect life as much as it can in the span of, almost 3 hours. And I mean, I'll be honest, it worked for me the first time I watched it.
Yep.
I think that, like you said on Twitter, a lot of it has to do with the gimmick. I think that the gimmick hooks you strongly the first time you watch this movie, and you're kind of mesmerized by just the experimental aspect of it. The fact that you're watching this kid and his immediate family grow older, not in real time, but sort of in real time, You're not spending 12 years in the movie theater, but you are watching 12 years pass by. And I think that definitely held my attention. That I think that carried me through stuff that it didn't carry me through this time. This time I was just more like, there's no novelty to it anymore. And it's not because there's other movies that have done it, but more like, well, I watched it once and that was enough. What more is there? And
you know what you're describing right now? I'm fairly positive at some point in our podcasting history we may have had this discussion on air, but I know we've talked about this off air. You're exactly describing what both you and I have said about quarantine, Jesus Christ, Cloverfield. It's when you, and a lot of people have said that about the Blair Witch Project. Obviously this movie's on a different plateau than those two, but the whole idea of you're entranced with seeing something new and this kind of radical concept the first time you watch it, but then when you watch it again and that's already washed over you and you go into it analytically thinking, you can see, oh, this might just kind of be a gimmick and not much more beyond that. I think there's more to this movie than Cloverfield for sure. I love the Blair Witch Project, so I'll say that, but
I think Cloverfield has a better story. I don't know, it's a better movie, but it has a better story.
Then what?
Than Boyhood.
Okay.
I think that Boyhood.
I thought you were about to talk shit about the Blair Witch Project, and I was going to drive to the other side of town.
Blair Witch is great. No, to me, Boyhood falters in two main aspects. One is the story, because I wouldn't mind the meandering if it arrived somewhere concrete, meaningful, insightful.
Did not stick the landing on this one.
Nope, and that's because sticking the landing would have reframed everything, right? The previous 2.5 hours, even if they felt like they had no purpose, like we're just kind of coasting along in a plotless way, if you stick the landing and manage to make sense of all that footage, of all that journey, and suddenly have it coalesce into something, a point that you're making, then it would redeem everything. You're like, okay, it was worth it. But it's just so, I don't even want to call it generic. The big statement of the movie is like, oh, well, that's life, I guess. And we'll keep going.
That's life.
Yeah. So to me, the story doesn't work. And then in what must be dubbed by now the almost famous syndrome, I think that Edward Coltrane just, and it's not even his fault. I don't think that
he learned on the job. Like I made that remark, like kind of sarcastically in the first half, but that's really what happened.
It sucks because it's I guess it's the nature of the experimental approach that Linklater took. You're making this commitment. You're committing to this kid, and you don't know what is gonna be. 10 years from now, is he still going to have interest in the project? I'm not saying that Ellen Coltrane is not talented, but I'm just saying that his talents may not align with what the movie was trying to do or what the movie needed at the end. And so it becomes a matter of Linklater having to write the second half of his movie to fit the person that Ellen Coltrane has become or is becoming. Which I imagine is a lot harder than when you're just writing for a kid. When you're writing for a kid, I think that you can just you have a pretty good idea of what you can get a kid to do. If you know that the kid is charismatic enough, then you can probably write around him, and then you can have Ethan Hawke and Patricia Arquette do the heavy lifting. But then the more it becomes Mason's story, the more you need that actor to pull his own weight and to have something to say. And I don't think that there was a good marriage of performer and character in the way that you see in Ethan Hawke or Patricia Arquette. So I know that the gimmick made me look past that the first time around. I remember defending Ellen Coltrane's performance coming out of Boyhood the first time. I don't know if you did the same, but I remember people saying, "Whoa, but he doesn't do anything, or he's just uninteresting." I was like, "Well, no, but that's the point. That's the point, because the point is that that's him, and we saw him grow up." I just don't feel that way anymore. I saw him grow up, and I didn't care. I just wanted him to do something to keep me interested, beyond the fact that it's the same kid from the very beginning, only all grown up now. That wasn't enough this time.
Eller Coltrane was the least of my concerns or complaints with this movie. I really do think the shoehorning of cultural references gets really tiresome, and I understand it's to help embellish or further the gimmick of the movie, but it gets annoying. And secondly, the whole Patricia Arquette angle or storyline, character arc, I can never help myself from speaking in wrestling talk. I apologize. The whole character arc with Olivia, it got to a point where I was joking in the first half. I literally ran out of sympathy for her character. I've kind of personal life and people I know and things like that. I've been around similar situations of, after a while, it's not life's taking a shit on you. It's that you're just a fuck up and you just continuously make these bad decisions, and the movie trying to give us sympathy towards her because of that. Look, Bad Hand, being a single mom's, again, something I could never relate to, and nor would I try to. Life deals you a bad hand, that's one thing, but then continuously making these piss poor shit ass decisions over and over again, putting your kids in literal danger according to the plot of this movie, and then I'm supposed to feel sorry for you. That doesn't work for me. And like we said in the first half, and this is something I've talked to friends in similar situations of, well, if shit was so fucked, why did you have a second kid to begin with? There's, unplanned pregnancies is a real thing, but that whole idea of, and I also say this, the benefit of being 32 and at this point never getting anyone pregnant in my life. And I assume if we're going by the plot of this movie, they said they were 23 when they had their first kid. Yeah, that's really young, and you could convince yourself that the way to salvage the relationship or life or something is to have another kid. But as an objective viewer, she's supposed to be, I think, the biggest storyline of the movie, or the biggest character arc in terms of, we watched her go through all these things, but it comes from it tries to exert sympathy from the audience, and like quicker than halfway through the movie I'm out of sympathy for her, so it becomes me just watching the Olivia character just kind of crumble and me not caring. And I think the first time I went through it, I was also fucking 6 years younger than I am now, and I think a lot of my perspective on life has changed, so I was probably entranced by it and really hooked by the Olivia story. I mean, all that to say, she in no way is Patricia Arquette's great. My complaints are not her. My complaints are the way the Olivia story arc is written, and that to me was like my big takeaway from it, because she has an even more domineering presence in the movie than the fucking main character does. But there's two sides to every coin, and I think Ethan Hawke's character, with the way it was written, Mason Sr., I think his character is kind of the opposite of what I'm saying. You're really not supposed to feel anything towards him, but to me that helps the Mason Sr. story, because I watch like him trying to redeem himself in life and get like a second chance and realize it basically seems at one point. That's it. I'm realizing it as I'm talking out loud. At one point in the movie, Mason Sr. realizes he was young and dumb and that he needs to own up to his mistakes of the past. At no point does Olivia acknowledge that like she's the problem. It's that life is the problem.
I have more sympathy. I was able to still have sympathy for Olivia. I think that Patricia Arquette's performance had a lot to do with it, much like with Ethan Hawke. Now that we're in Contrarians Corner, I think that the movie certainly benefits from having two very, very strong actors playing the parents. Because, like I said in Contrarians Corner, I don't think the movie helps the Patricia Arquette character in the way that it chooses to tell her story. I think that the scenes in the movie omits are so vital to our understanding of the things she does that it's trusting us to kind of assume that she was always doing what she thought best, and that whenever she's done something that's really bad or made like a really frustrating decision for us, for the viewers, it was justified in some way. And I think you can only take that so far. I'm okay with making the assumptions, but I think that the movie would be much better if I had the same love I have for a character than I do for the Ethan Hawke character. Because they're both so flawed, but there has to be a reason why I care so much for Ethan Hawke and why I think that his character here is just great. Whereas when I see the Patricia Arquette character, I'm like, well, it's great mostly because she's a great actress, but there's a lot that's missing. And she even has probably more screen time, but it's just tricky when you see a character make the same mistakes over and over. And when you kind of fast forward through her achievements, it's like she graduates, she becomes a professor, but we don't really see that. It's like it just gets dropped on us. Suddenly she's teaching. Suddenly she graduated school. It's just kind of happening in the background, and somehow the Ethan Hawke character with a similar treatment gets. I guess his scenes have more heart, which is what makes it more. It just makes it easier to root for him. All his scenes with his kids. The warmth that's there, it's not in the scenes that they have with their mom. The mom's always, and I understand, right? I mean, I understand that the mom's character she has the burden of having to care for these kids 24/7. But I wish I'd gotten some more scenes of her being just, a really a caring parent, as opposed to just being the person that's always hustling them and trying to get them to do their work, and then putting, not on purpose, but putting their lives in danger. That I think that she could have used like something that would have made her character a little more sympathetic. All that said, I still that final scene that she has when she breaks out,
her literal Oscar clip.
Yeah, her literal Oscar clip. It still worked for me because I understand the sentiment. I think that the sentiment is universal enough that even if it's not being pulled off directly by this character, I think it still resonates. The idea that, man, I went through all this shit and I've had accomplishments, and yet I don't know what to do now. That's, I can relate to it, not as in like, oh, well, that's how I felt, but I'm like, that sounds like something believable that would happen to a person, especially if so much of your life has been defined by your children and you taking care of your children, doing what you do, whatever sacrifices you made them for your children. So what happens when you don't have to do that anymore because your children have moved on, and now it's just you staring at the next 20, 30 years of your life without that? What does that feel like? So she's a really good actress. She can pull off that moment. I can only imagine how much more powerful that would be if she was playing opposite an actor that could match her, but she is, like I mentioned, like I don't think that Ella Coltrane has it. So I think that damages that last stretch of the story, where I don't know, how old is he supposed to be then? Like 18? I don't know.
18 or 19, yeah.
Yeah. If you had like a more seasoned actor, I think, playing opposite her, then that would be a lot more hard hitting. But as you have it, she's just giving it her all, and then they cut to him and he's just underreacting. And it's not that he made the decision to underreact in this particular scene. He's been underreacting for the last hour and a half of the movie. So it's bad. But then, I think that where we are 100% in sync is just Ethan Hawke is the MVP. I mean, he just brings it. He finds a way to be lovable, even though the flaws of his character are just apparent. They're not hidden or anything. They're just there.
No. Yeah, I agree with most of what you were saying there. It's, as we in unison pretty much at the beginning said, though, it's a movie that loses a lot of its luster on a second. It's like Twister. It loses a lot of its appeal the second time you watch it. That being said, it's a great looking movie. I'm probably going to literally say that quote you read of A idea, C execution. It's I tweeted about this too, and I don't know if you'd agree with me. I think from the same time period, the same time frame, that The Spectacular Now is a better version of this story and a better execution of this. But that's also, you have Miles Teller at the helm of that, who's an incredibly talented actor, as opposed to Eller Coltrane here, who's just kind of wet behind the ears still with this movie. But that would be my recommendation. If someone ever asked, should I watch Boyhood, I would say watch The Spectacular Now instead.
Well, I still haven't seen The Spectacular Now. I know that Cal Chandler is an alcoholic, right?
I mean,
Or
you only
Miles
get really...
Teller?
Miles Teller's an alcoholic.
Okay.
You get like one scene with old Chandler, and you can see where he got it from. But it's not the exact same movie, and they're not telling the exact same things. But it's for what they try to tell. And like I said earlier at the beginning of Real Talk, Richard Linklater already made a better movie like this. It was called Dazed and Confused, the whole coming of age thing, and dealing with the trials and tribulations of growing up. And when's the last time you saw Dazed and Confused?
Maybe a couple of years ago. I don't know. I've only seen it once, and it was...
Oh, baby,
then.
Fire that back up. Yeah. I think it might be 90 minutes on the nose, but yeah, you need to fire that up. That movie is, for as much as it's quoted and overblown, I feel it's underrated as an actual movie. So when you have some spare time during this quarantine, Julio, you might want to add that to your list, or I would recommend it at least.
Just to... I don't know, to get Linklater a chance to redeem himself.
It's got Contrarians favorites in it too, Rory Cochrane and Sasha Jensen. Was that guy's name from Halloween 5? Oh. Yeah, it's and I'm skipping Amy, so to speak. Joey Lauren Adams is in it too. And Mila Jovovich, but don't let that sway you away from it.
I don't have a problem with Mila Jovovich. Actress Mila Jovovich.
Jesus.
I like Richard Linklater. I wouldn't say that he's one of my go-to filmmakers, but the Before trilogy, obviously, I rated extremely high, and I like some of his other movies. I think when I think of him, though, I do...
That's it. Olivia should have been Julie Delpy. That would have tied this whole movie together.
God, that would have given it some metatextual feeling that I don't know if I would go with that, but think of like how many, I would say so many of his movies are not very plot driven, not to the extent that Boyhood is not plot driven, but even something like Dazed and Confused or, the Before trilogy, a lot of it is just kind of people having a day. And, they're like little plot landmarks that they have to hit. But for the most part, it's just the characters being the characters and kind of...
But I would argue that, especially with the Before trilogy, because those movies are just, here's a day that these people had, it stays on the ball way more than this does.
Yes, I think that what they benefit from pre-planning. I think that he didn't just set Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy loose and said like, all right, well, I'm just going to shoot you guys talk and make sure you have a fight at this point or whatever. I mean, I think that they're very meticulously planned, and even if they weren't, at the very least, I think they had a beginning, middle, and end in their head before they set out to make them. I really think that, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I don't know how much he had planned ahead when it came to Boyhood, but like I said, I think that it was...
I did read that he had planned that he told Ethan Hawke that if Richard Linklater said, if I die, you have to finish this movie. So I know he had planned that far ahead.
But as far as where everything was headed, at least watching it. Here's the thing. Watching the Before trilogy, I wouldn't blame anybody for assuming that it wasn't really planned and that it was just kind of the actors, Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke, kind of just having their talks as they know the characters so well. And watching Boyhood, I wouldn't blame anybody for just assuming that, every year, whenever it came time to shoot, he would just kind of gather everybody together and be like, all right, what is this segment going to be about? And what's going on in the world? And all right, well, let's write a little story around that. But without really moving forward towards an endpoint that went anywhere further than, well, Mason graduates high school or Mason starts college. Maybe he knew that. Maybe he knew that it ended when Mason started college. But I don't think that's enough. I think that you need more. I don't want to sound too technical about it, too much of a square as far as storytelling goes. But I wish that there was more of a structure that it wouldn't matter so much if everything else in the movie worked, I guess. But to me, it's crazy, right? That what he decides to give time to in this movie, like you said, there's a whole Harry Potter sequence, and it really is there just to give us to bookmark that, oh, well, this is when it's happening. It's when like the sixth book is coming out, I think, or whatever. And it doesn't really amount to anything else in the big scheme of things. I mean, the introduction of his step brother and his step sibling, the stepsister, they never show up again. And it's like, I understand that if your goal is to mimic life, well, yeah, there's a pretty good chance that he would never hear from those kids again. But I think that the conventions of movie making and movie storytelling kind of prep you as an audience to expect them to come back, to be referenced at some point. It's just weird when they're such an important part of the movie and then they're not. There's like when it gets to the graduation scene, and I think that's the closest the movie comes to bringing everybody together. It was kind of interesting. They have that not neighbor, but the Patricia Arquette's friend that they live with after they live.
Her muscle.
Yeah. That was cool that she comes back and the daughter is there, but then they say that the older kid is somewhere in college or whatever. I was like, man, this would have been like a pretty good opportunity to bring all those characters that you have kind of spread out throughout the movie, but not everybody makes it back. And instead, we get Ethan Hawke's brother that we've never seen, we've never heard of. He shows up to do a bit. To me, it just felt like he was just constantly kind of like flying by the seat of his pants, and he was just, like I said, making it up as
unnecessary. Like, you're gonna be knee deep in tail. I was just like, all right.
I appreciate the experimental aspect of it, but to me, the experiment, I don't know that it failed, but because in the end, it's a movie that you can watch at least once and come out with things from.
It's a movie I would recommend that you do watch once and just once.
Yeah, there's a novelty, there's the performances, all that stuff, but I think that the experiment proves that maybe, once again, it proves that there's a reason why you have a traditional way of making movies, telling a story, and all the stuff. I think that sometimes an experiment can reveal a new way of telling a story, but more often than not, the experiment will prove that, oh, well, this is why we don't do it this way, right? Yeah. And it's like, what do you really gain by shooting it the way that Richard Linklater did? You gain that the two main kids, grow up before your eyes. But does that make up for everything else that you lose? I don't think so.
It's a weird thing. I so very much respect that he had this idea and actually pulled it off, because there's so many things that could have gone awry and like just caused this project to derail at one point, and I'm sure that's something he was conscious of the entire time he was making it. So I very much respect that idea that he was able to, he had this vision and he saw it through. That's fucking awesome. Now, where these critiques in our discussion comes from is when you say I'm supposed to analyze this through the same lens that I did Birdman or Whiplash or something like that, that's where it becomes different. That's me now looking and saying, okay, if I'm looking past the gimmick of this and looking into the characters and their motivations, their drives, their actions and reactions and that type of thing, that's where this discussion's coming from, because I'm not just comparing it to Birdman or Whiplash or Foxcatcher or something like that. You're listing these movies in front of me and saying pick which one is best from these. So that's why it's easy to pick these holes in it. And the whole, back to when you originally started a few moments ago about the planning and the preparation. Yeah, the Before trilogy is incredible because those words were written and those actors memorized them and did that, and that whole idea of that trilogy was there in his mind, not just kind of like this, well, we'll just kind of see where it goes type thing. That's why when I said fuck off when it got nominated for Best Original Screenplay, at the basis of this, there's nothing really fantastic or groundbreaking. Even if this script was written when he started it, it's still like, it's not like the script is something really powerful.
Right. If you were shooting it the traditional way, what would there be to it? I mean, there's really not much. There's a couple of well-written scenes, but it's not. I mean, the Ethan Hawke scenes are really well written, but that's it. You would actually dock screenwriting points for all the unnecessary fluff that you have there.
Yeah, because it gets a pass, though, because it relies on nostalgia and the fact that the movie has a gimmick that incorporates it.
I was going to say, I wonder if growing up in the States and growing up during those years, like if you're maybe Mason's age or closer to Mason's age, it adds an extra dimension to the experience, because then it's not just that you're watching this kid grow up, but you're kind of watching him grow up with you, right? If you were Mason's age when he went to the Harry Potter release party, if you're Mason's age when he's discussing the prequels with his dad and all that stuff, then it's not just that you're watching his life, you're kind of watching your life as well.
Yeah, and like the first time I saw it, I remember I popped when Anthem Part 2 by Blink started playing, and then like rewatching it now is like figuring out what it was just basically like timestamps. The most egregious one is that clip of him watching that landlord skit with Will Ferrell on his laptop.
Yeah, the Funny or Die skit.
Yeah, I was like, oh, it's 2005. Okay. I was looking over the Oscars from that year. I think Foxcatcher was my favorite movie that year. Do you remember? You're a Birdman guy, so was Birdman your movie of that year?
Yeah, 100%. But I was rooting for Ethan Hawke, and I'm pretty sure I was rooting for Patricia Arquette as well. I was really high on Boyhood that year. I mean, I was too. Yeah, I was rooting for Birdman, but I remember just, like I said, I was defending Ila Coltrane's performance, and I was just telling everybody. I remember my mother, after she watched it was either before or after the Oscars, but she kind of like messaged me and she was like, I don't really get it. I don't get why people are going crazy over this movie. And I remember just sending her an email explaining to her, why it was so powerful to see this child grow before our very eyes and why it was so good, that final scene with Patricia Arquette. And now I could say the same thing, but I completely understand why it didn't hit her hard at all, because she was even more disconnected from it than I was. I was not Mason's age, but I was already living in the States, at least through what happens here in this movie, right? The Obama signs, I remember those. I wasn't a kid and I was not putting them up, but that at least kind of strikes a chord. Same with most of the little pop culture references, but to somebody that was not even part of the culture, somebody that lived in Peru, that's another thing that completely goes over their heads and another emotional connection that's not happening.
Yeah, and there's a lot of shit in this too that's very, very specific to Texas, to a point where like shit annoys me that someone watching this in fucking Bangor, Maine could not, like, they would find it charming. Like the whole thing with the fucking what's the name of the restaurant they go to in Austin with the famous queso?
Is it Kirby Lane that they go
Kirby.
to? Or did they go to Magnolia?
Yeah. It looked like Kirby, but like just that whole thing, like as a localer, I was like, ugh. Like, I was so annoyed by it. But, like, yeah, again, someone watching in Paducah, Kentucky would be like, God damn, they'd make that queso real good in Austin, I guess. So, it's one of those, it's like King of the Hill, honestly, in the sense of, like, you can enjoy it on its own, but there's this extra added filter and sheen to it if you're a Texan. So, gotta appreciate that. Like I said, the shots of Houston that were very relatable and recognizable. Anyway, it's a very difficult movie to give a letter grade to because the idea and the effort and the will behind it is very admirable and something that's unrivaled in my lifetime. And so that's awesome. But the actual movie, if I'm judging it cover to cover, is very average.
Yeah, with above average performances from Ethan Hawke and Patricia Arquette, in my opinion.
Yes.
I'm going to, when it first came out, I would have given it a 5 stars. I was in love with this movie. And now that it's so many years later, I think I'm gonna go with 3 stars.
I was gonna say either a C plus or a B minus.
Yeah, it really bothers me. The ending, that last half hour is pretty painful. I was, for a good chunk of the runtime, I was just playing at being negative, as I was writing my notes and kind of laughing at it. But once we hit teenager Mason, especially like college age Mason, it was just so... I lost interest. Really got on my nerves. It was not working at all for me.
Yep. Can relate. So, that was Boyhood. We covered both sides of it in about half the runtime, so you're welcome. What's on deck next, Julio?
Next, we are actually starting the Summer of Winona.
My God.
It's arrived. It's here. We didn't expect it to happen this way, all quarantined and stuff, but it's still going to happen.
What kicks us off?
All right. Summer of Winona begins May 1st with episode 107, Mr. Deeds, the Adam Sandler movie. That's a remake.
I've never seen it.
I've never seen it either. I haven't even seen the original. I don't remember I know it's a remake from an older movie, but never seen it. I know Winona Ryder is the love interest there, and she's blonde. That's all I know. And John Turturro plays his butler, I think.
Well, we'll get through this together.
I was telling you, Alex, off mic, that I already watched the first season of Stranger Things. I'm very excited to watch the next 2. That will be our climatic point in the Summer of Winona. But we have a whole bunch of, a summer's worth of episodes. Just as a reminder for everybody, goes Mr. Deeds, Edward Scissorhands, Alien Resurrection, Little Women, the 1994 version, Reality Bites, Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Darwin Awards, Beetlejuice, The Crucible, The Dilemma, Heathers, and then Stranger Things with the Winonis at the very end. That's August 20th. So we have a whole summer of Winona Ryder stuff. And if you're with us for the Summer of Travolta, it's an epic, very fun undertaking. I'm sure Winona will do the same, even though she's a very different kind of performer compared to John Travolta.
I very much hope that we will be able to be together for the Winonis. I would hope by August that we're allowed to be together once more. So that is coming up. Looking forward to it. And moving along now, closing us out with our plugs. As always, we thank the Festive Years for them lending us their tracks Last Stand and Summer of 99 that open and close our podcast respectively. Thefestiveyears.com for all your Festive Years needs.
Also, our logo is done for our fellow podcaster and artist, Hans Rothgieser. He has a website, mildemonios.pe, MILDEMONIOS. He has a Twitter at Mildemonios, email address mildemonios@hotmail.com. Contact him if you want logos, if you want comics, if you want to ask him about his 2 podcasts, Nación Combi, which is in Spanish, it's on every podcatcher, and Living in Peru, which is on iVox, it's in English. Nación Combi is about Peruvian current affairs. Living in Peru is about immigrants to Peru, although that's not happening. Nobody's immigrating anywhere right now because we're all quarantined. He also wrote a whole bunch of zombie novels that now probably seem like they're closer to happening now that we're in this sort of pre-post-apocalyptic landscape all over the world. But if you want to ask him about his latest zombie book, Requiem por Lurin, just contact him for any of your Hans Rothgieser needs. Also, he told me, Hans, he always sends us feedback, and he listened to our Prometheus commentary, and, we kind of, I guess, jokingly wondered how he felt about Prometheus, and he told me that he doesn't really remember much because his relationship with Prometheus is that he has a friend that hates that movie, and so Hans and a bunch of their other mutual friends, just to get on this guy's nerves, are always coming up with things that are good about Prometheus and then bringing them up around him, so he would get really worked up. So when he thinks of Prometheus, all he can think of is all the good stuff that he's come up with to make this guy angry. So I told him, well, you should rewatch Prometheus and see how much of it holds up. Also, in our future, and as part of our plugs, we mentioned it before, and we're about to play the promo for it, but the livestream for The Cure is happening. Livestream for The Cure 4 is happening the last weekend of May. So let me
put the promo here, and then we'll talk a little bit about it.
Can you imagine a world immune to all forms of cancer?
Ladies and gentlemen, the time has come for our 4th annual live stream for the cure.
And this year, we need your help more than ever.
Please join us May 27th through May 31st for 48 hours of live content from guests and podcasts around the world.
We'll be aiming for our most ambitious goal to date as we try to raise $10,000 for the Cancer Research Institute.
Please visit www.livestreamforthecure.com for more information on this year's event and how you can be a part of it. Together, we can make a difference.
So Livestream for the Cure 4, as you heard, just go to livestreamforthecure.com for all the information. It's going to go from May 27th to May 31st. May 27th is just like a special kickoff event from 6 to 10. And then all the other days is 10 to midnight, 10 a.m. to midnight. The 31st is 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We, the Contrarians, will be there on May 30th at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are going to be doing a movie that will be disclosed. I want to say maybe we can do it as part of the Summer of Winona kickoff festivities. And next episode, May 1st, we can reveal what movie we're going to be doing for Livestream for the Cure. But we're going to be doing the same thing we did last year, which is, just our thing, but in a shortened format. We have about 50 minutes, I think, to do it. So it'll be fun.
Excellent. All right, my plug for this week, obviously being inside a lot, been dusting off some old video games and whatnot, and not an oldie, but a newie. I came across this game on the PlayStation Network called Detroit Become Human. It is awesome. It's one of those cinematic games where you kind of play through these QuickTime events. There's like 40 different endings to the game, and what you do throughout the game kind of affects the outcome, the decisions your characters make, that type of thing. It's kind of like a much better version of iRobot in that it's based in the not-so-distant future, and we have these cyborgs, these robots, I guess, that they work for us and they help us, and they're, they work in our homes, and you can buy them for your kids and that type of stuff, and then they basically become self-aware and they start growing emotion and revolting against humans, and it basically breaks out into this like war between the two of them. It's fucking awesome. If you have a PlayStation 4, first of all, if you're an Xbox person, fuck off. Be normal. Get a PlayStation.
I'll take offense to that.
But if you have a PS4, be sure to get Detroit. It's on sale right now. There's so many great sales on the PlayStation Network. I got it for like $15 with a couple other games. So, Detroit, Become Human. And if you're not much of a gamer, you can just watch a playthrough online because the game plays out like a movie. It's got like some actual notable actors in it and that type of shit too. So it's a must play.
The only reason I'm an Xbox person, not a PS4 person, was because when I went shopping on that fateful Black Friday where I finally bought my Xbox console, that was the thing that was on sale. Like I walked into the store and there was a nice Xbox 360 bundle. It was the Guitar Hero Aerosmith bundle. So you got the Xbox, you got the guitar, and you got the Aerosmith game, and it was super cheap. If I happened to walk into a similar bundle that was a PS4, then I would be a PS person right now. Well, not a PS4, but whatever PlayStation was at the time. It just, it was Xbox. So I bought the Xbox. I set up the Xbox. I got the Xbox Gold. So all my shit is set up on Xbox. And that's really the main reason I'm an Xbox person now. If I wanted to switch to being, I bought an Xbox One instead of a PS4 because it just seemed like an easier transition. And as far as the game library, there wasn't much of a difference. So I was like, sure.
Why not?
I mean, someday I'll buy a PS whatever. But at the time, it kind of hurt me when they had that Spider-Man game. Was it like last year, 2 years ago? That was
God, that game rules.
Yeah, it was PlayStation exclusive, and that kind of bothered me. But not enough to buy a PlayStation. I was like, it's not like I have time to play it anyway. If it had happened like pre-quarantine, well, then probably there wouldn't be any PlayStations to buy anyway, so it doesn't matter.
All right, so Detroit Become Human. Check it out. Julio, what do you got?
So I'm going to be guesting on a podcast. I'll plug it properly whenever it actually comes out, but guys from 2-piece on a podcast. Gerald sent a message, and I said, sure, let's do. They do top 5 lists with a guest, and I suggested, just to keep it in theme, I said, let's do top 5 not popular movies that we like, and I made a list of those, and there were a few that I had to watch. I told you I watched that sci-fi movie I was just telling you about with Archangel or Angel. Pandorum, yeah. I watched Pandorum, which is like, low on Rotten Tomatoes, because I remember liking it. Turns out I don't like it anymore. And then I had my list, Weekend at Bernie's 2. But I didn't want to watch Weekend at Bernie's 2 just cold. I mean, I remember watching it a long time ago, so I watched the first one. I'm not going to plug the sequel, because Weekend at Bernie's 2 turns out it's not a good movie. I liked it when I was young.
So I've heard.
The first one is really good. It holds up. Have you seen it before?
A long time ago.
I used to watch it all the time. We owned the VHS copies of both. And to me, it was the funniest thing ever when I was a kid or a teenager. I don't know. And I hadn't seen it in forever. I was so relieved to watch it last night and see that it was still funny. It holds up. It's very clever. The first one. Everything I'm saying applies only to the first one. It's very clever in the way that it's written, the way that, we're complaining here on the Boyhood episode about how like the structure is just off and there's no setups and payoffs. That's the complete opposite on something like this. And this is a movie from 1989. I think that I was maybe expecting I should have had lower expectations because, it's just going to be some sort of like cheeseball comedy. But no, this is like so much more well-crafted than I expected. And Jonathan Silverman and Andrew McCarthy are so good, so have such good comedic chemistry. It's kind of a shame that they didn't go on to make more movies. They made the sequel and then that was it. And I was tweeting about it last night. I would pay so much money to watch either a third Weekend at Bernie's movie where those two get back together, or just another comedy just starring the two of them just being awesome and being funny. I don't know how likely that is to happen. I mean, I think that Andrew McCarthy has moved on to directing more than he does acting, and I think Jonathan Silverman might be more of a stage actor these days. I don't know, but they're both great. I would say if you've never watched Weekend at Bernie's, watch it. It's unfortunately you can't rent it anywhere to stream. You have to buy it. And
nice.
In the case of the first one, it's well worth paying the $14-15 because it's a really good movie. I would say hold your horses on the second one. If you really like the first one, you can then you can pull the trigger on that. But
well, you don't have to watch the second one. If you just want to watch the first one, you can do a Terry Kaiser double feature and then watch Weekend at Bernie's and then follow it up with Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Breed.
How much screen time does he get on
not The New Breed, I'm sorry. The New Breed's Gremlins, The New Blood. No, Kaiser has a sizable role in that.
He is so good. I just spent all the time praising Silverman and McCarthy, but Terry Kaiser is so fucking funny. And he's funny in the first one. He's playing just a corpse. In the second one, the way that they figure out how to do a sequel to Weekend at Bernie's, which would be unsequelable, I would think, is that they have this voodoo priestess cast a spell that makes Bernie, who's dead, come to life and dance whenever music is playing. So you have Terry Kaiser, just be really funny by being this corpse that suddenly comes to life and dances whenever music comes on. It's just so funny. He is, unsung hero of American comedy history.
Well, we have, with those recommendations, lined up one hell of a day for you in quarantine, so y'all have fun with that. And
one final shout out. She's been helping us out, working for the Contrarians for a few weeks now. Our friend who we've mentioned before, Zoe Perez, I guess she's officially our PA, our production assistant. She's been helping us with a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. Mostly, you might have seen her handiwork on our Instagram account, which we're at Contrarian Prime. If you haven't, check us out on Instagram. We're putting a lot of exclusive clips over there. But she's been working really hard and making it so I have to work a little less. So thank you, Zoe.
Yeah, Zoe, really appreciate it. Doing great work, and we really appreciate helping getting our brand bigger and whatnot. So that wraps us up for Boyhood, and the summer of Winona is on deck with Mr. Deeds, my God. But as always, we appreciate y'all listening to The Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong, and we will catch you next time.